Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/entitled people. In today's episode, my entitled mother demanded I hand over my house to her because my little sister is pregnant and needs it more than me. My entitled mother showed her real self and now no one loves her anymore. My mother tried to have me sent to military school and forged my dad's signature. Blows up in her face. The time I got my mother to walk right into my door. Drunk mother showed up to berate me in the middle of the night and vomited all over herself. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My entitled mother demanded I hand over my house to her because my little sister is pregnant and needs it more than me. I, 31M, have a sister, 28F, that has honestly been the golden child to my mother but not my father for as long as I can remember. My parents divorced when I was a teenager because my mother cheated with an old high school ex-boyfriend and has always been controlling, manipulative and narcissistic. And sadly my sister was like her little mini-me. Our mother also seemed to believe she had total authority over me anytime she so much as snapped her fingers. She'd snap them and order me around like a dog. It was demeaning. And my sister always backed her up too. So no surprise I went to live with my dad full-time after our parents split while my sister stayed with mom. The two of them were very alike. And both pretty much stopped speaking with my father unless it was about money. Though I'm more like my dad. My father was very business-oriented and started teaching me how to do his line of work as soon as I was 16. I got pretty good at it. And after 12 years of working for my father, I was made a partner in his company. Things were great. But then about 8 months ago, tragedy struck. My father had become somewhat immunocompromised due to being a heavy smoker for much of his life and died at only 60 years old after he caught C-19. I met my mother and sister for the first time in years after we had a socially distanced funeral for my father over video call. My father was cremated by his own request and buried in a local cemetery. So there was no body or casket. My sister seemed to grieve, but my mother looked indifferent the entire time. Though I honestly was not surprised. The last time she saw my father, she screamed at him that he owed her more money, and then threatened to sue him. To which he just laughed at her. He'd paid alimony and child support as long as he was legally mandated to, and no more than that. And he even put $30,000 toward my sister's college fund. But 10 years after the divorce, he was no longer legally required to send mom money anymore because of the judge's ruling. And she's by no means broke. She works the same job she has had for nearly 3 decades, fully owns the old family home we used to share, and even rents out 2 of the rooms in it to Airbnb regularly. She's by no means hurting for money. Sometime after the funeral, my dad's will was read. Apparently he'd figured that if his heavy smoking didn't eventually do him in, something else would. And even joked about it in a pre-recorded video. I was pretty much willed nearly all of his assets, from most of his money to his business and home. He left my sister a car, 2015 Nissan Altima, and about $10,000 in cash. My mother only got $1,000 and a few other items that she'd been claiming were rightfully hers since the divorce. Beyond that, I got the rest. And my girlfriend now lives with me in the house my father passed down to me. My sister pretty much went from finishing 2 years of community college to living off her boyfriend and only working part-time online for several years. And during that time she got pregnant but suffered a traumatic miscarriage. I wasn't aware till after the funeral because we were practically no contact and no one else told me. When lockdown hit, her boyfriend's job started downsizing little by little and eventually he was only able to stay on part-time. Which hampered hers and his finances to the point he was finally telling her she needed to look for better employment as well since he was trying to find a second job. And then she got pregnant. She claims her and her BF were careful, but calls it her miracle baby. One evening I got an unexpected knock at my door. And when I answered, I was unpleasantly greeted by both my mother and sister. They both walked right in without even asking and made themselves comfortable in my living room. My girlfriend and I shared a look of confusion and I asked why they'd come by. My sister was giggling and looking all over, opening doors and seemingly giving herself a tour of my home. My mother had just plopped herself down on my sofa and snapped her fingers while demanding a cold bottled water. My GF got the water for her and I asked what they were here for. My sister seemed all giddy and just ignored me to continue snooping around my home. And before long I heard her yell from down the hall, "Mommy, it's perfect." Yes. She still calls her mommy. My mother finally spoke up and said, "Well, I think it's time to did your brotherly duty." To which I was like, "What?" My mother then proceeded to say, "Now that your father has passed, this house should have gone to me since I was his only spouse. But you can still fix this. You make plenty of money and could just buy a new house. Your sister needs this one so much more since she's the one with a baby on the way. But if you're so determined on staying, you could just keep to one room and cover all of the bills until you decide to move out." My GF and I read enough Reddit to know exactly where this is going. And how it'd play out if I let it go on. So I guess you could say we were mentally prepared. I took a deep breath and stated aloud, "That's not happening. You don't order me around. Especially not in my own home. Yes, I make plenty of money. But like Dad, I'm gonna save it for when I really need it. Not that you care." My mother started snapping her fingers at me like she used to and loudly stated, "Stop. I am your mother. And you will do as I say because I brought you into this world, and I'm the one in charge here. And as far as you're concerned, I am God. That means when I say jump, you say how high? This house is rightfully mine. And your sister will live here. Consider this your formal eviction. But since I'm gracious, I'll give you 2 weeks to pack your bags and transfer the deed to me." In the back of my mind I'm thinking, this can't be real. But then I just grabbed my cell phone and started dialing. My mother quickly stood up and yelled, "What are you doing?" And I retorted, "I'm doing what I should have done as soon as this shit started. I'm calling the cops to get you out of my house." She started swiping at me and managed to knock my phone out of my hands. Then she proceeded to try and stomp on it. But I was quick enough to snatch it up before she could. "That's it. If you don't leave, I will force you out myself." My mother proceeded to slap me across the face. And I returned the favor twice as hard backhanded. So much so I ended up knocking her back down onto the couch. She held her hand over her reddening and smeared makeup face in total shock. And then yelled, "How dare you!" I went back to dialing on my phone and said that if she didn't leave, I would have police come and remove her by force. My sister came barreling in between us, holding her arms out and saying that I should just do the right thing for once in my life and be a good big brother. I snapped and said, "Oh really? I'm the bad sibling? Last I checked I was the one who's had to work for a living since I was a teenager. I had to do all the chores in the house while you just sat on your ass playing video games or talking with your friends all day. And you used to steal my hard-earned money just to go out shopping after you spent all of your allowance. You're a complete mooch and thief. So I don't owe you shit. Now both of you get out before I decide to dial this last number." My sister started to tear up, crying like a baby, and said, "Mommy, make him stop." My mother began hugging her and kissing her cheeks while giving me a death glare. Then she seemed to think she'd gotten smart and said, "You know, if you do call the police, I can just tell them that you hit me. And who knows, I could maybe say to everyone you wanted to do a lot worse to a poor pregnant girl in need. I don't think that'd be very good thing for your." I cut her off with a raised hand and said, "Just stop. If you haven't noticed, my girlfriend over there has had her phone out recording almost this whole time. And that means we have recorded evidence of you assaulting me first and openly stating you'd lie to police. I don't think that'd be so good for your reputation at your job, or your little Airbnb. If looks could kill, my mother would have blew me up like a tactical nuke. But she quickly deflated and started dragging my crying sister out by the arm. My sister was somehow acting like a complete toddler and broke loose of our mother's grip to sit down on my porch step and have a tantrum. I just gave my mother a look and said, "Do you see now? This is the result of the spoiled way you raised her." She glared at me again, and then I was treated to a show of my mother trying to drag my sister off of my porch steps. But she latched onto the porch handrails and kept saying, "You promised me," over and over again. I let out a cackle and told them both from the door to never come back. My mother flipped me the bird and then went back to trying to drag my sister off the porch. It took a few minutes, but she finally got my sister to get up and leave with her by saying, "I am a cruel, heartless bastard who will go to hell for this." I laughed some more and said that there's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way. My mother clenched her fists and was about to say more when I just held up my smartphone again with it recording and said, "The clock is ticking, Mom. Get off my property." My mother then walked my sister to the car, gave me one last snooty look and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. But letting things go was never something my mother would do. After a few days, I started getting messages from people I know and some relatives online. A lot of them were furious with me. But others just had questions about what was going on. I tried to check my FB, but couldn't see anything they were saying because my sister and mother both blocked me on their social media. But my girlfriend could still see everything because they kept their profiles set to open. We screenshotted everything and then printed some of it out. Both of their profiles had posts that called me a greedy, heartless bastard who stole the house that was meant to be my sister's inheritance right out from under her by paying off the lawyer who handled Dad's will. Which is a complete and utter lie, and they both know it. I called my lawyer, who was also my father's lawyer and a trusted family friend, and gave him copies of all the screenshots from FB and the video my girlfriend had recorded the day my mother demanded my house. He wanted to just write a formal C&D. But I wanted to take it further than that. And he sent them a letter I told him to write via express mail that had to be signed for. So I know they got it. My mother called me in an absolute fury the same day the letter was delivered. I told her that if she and my sister didn't redact all of the untrue social media posts they made about me and tell the absolute truth, I'd send all of the information I have to the whole family, her boss, and upload the videos we'd recorded of her online. And then I'd sue her on top of it. She called me unreasonable, and that she just did what she did for my sister's sake. And then went into a full-blown lecture reiterating her belief that my sister still needs my house more than me. I bluntly stated I didn't care what she thought. And if she didn't redact everything and tell the truth, I'd make sure her career would be over. She begrudgingly said, "Fine. You win. Have it your way and keep the house," before hanging up the phone. That very evening, all of the lying posts disappeared from both their profiles. I was unblocked, and my mother gave me and everyone else a half-assed apology claiming she jumped the gun with everything she said because she thought my sister needed my house more than me because she's broke and pregnant. But the house was rightfully mine according to my father's will, and she knew that even before my father passed away. So she had no right to try and claim it. As for my sister, she also apologized, but more or less just parroted everything our mother said while claiming she just went along with her ideas. And then she blamed what she did all on our mother and her pregnancy hormones. The replies poured in for some time on both my mother and sister's profiles. Many furious with them for trying to take my house. I got a lot messages of sorries and my bads from those who'd previously believed her. But all it really did was show me who was more on her side to begin with, since they were all believing her nonsense so quickly. They were mostly people from her side of the family anyway. No one on my father's side believed her at all. And openly said so. My sister and her boyfriend ended up moving in with our mother to save money. But she put them in the basement to keep her Airbnb running. And my sister started crying on social media that she can't live upstairs. And I'm pretty sure the two of them were fighting with each other because all my sister did after that is complain online, and my mother barely posted anything on her SM anymore because of the previous stunt she'd tried. And for those of you who read this far, it's not the end of the story. Stay tuned for the rest soon. I'll take children's revenge fantasies for 1000, Alex. Yup, a reading of the will is a thing in TV and film but hasn't really been a thing for decades. Tonight, Matthew. I will make up a story. Anyone else enjoy pretend stories and miss stars in their eyes? I'm glad I'm not the only one who instantly could tell this is fanfiction written by a 16 years old. They tried combining bits of real stories that got huge karma and it came off faker than an $11 bill, lol. My sister wanted my house too. I was moving and putting up my old house for sale, but she wanted me to transfer the house to her name, but I keep making the payments and she's paying me back under the table. Yeah, that was big no, and she cried to our mom to make me like we were still little kids. I told her to just buy it legit if she wanted it, but her credit was horrible and she would never be approved for the loan needed. I needed to sell it though to buy the new one, and my sister was and still is unemployed, so I know she would never have the money to pay me back the mortgage, HOA fees, and taxes. Good for you. Stay strong, and I wish you all the happiness in your life. You know, I actually remember your story some time ago. Yeah, our mothers and sisters are pretty similar. Hey Opie, considering you have so much evidence, mind sharing it with us, or are you gonna prove this is a fantasy you made up because your mom took away your Switch? My entitled mother showed her real self and now no one loves her anymore. Now you all know from my last post that my mother tried to act like she's in charge of my life and also acted like my house was hers to give away. Well, that ended very badly for both her and my spoiled sister because I threatened to expose them. And that whole incident inspired me to get cameras for my house inside and outside. My dad was old school. He didn't care for cameras at home. Hell, he didn't even care for TV save for the occasional movie. He mostly enjoyed his scotch with a cigarette and a good book. But now I own this house, and cameras were a very needed upgrade. And just in case my GF and I didn't tell anybody outside of our close friend circles about them. And those that do know were sworn to secrecy and kept their word. A couple of weeks had gone by without any word from my mother or sister other than what I was seeing on my sister's social media. She was constantly complaining about having to live in our mother's basement. And I'm pretty sure she was making our mother miserable for it. But what came next surprised me. I got a frantic call from my sister saying that her boyfriend was questioning whether or not he was the father of her pregnancy. And he was threatening to leave without a paternity test. My sister swore up and down to me that she's always been faithful to him. I admit I believed there was a chance she could be lying. Because our mother's own past affair made our father question our paternity as well. So I suggested they get the DNA test. But my sister just babbled about how they don't have a lot of money. I offered to pay for it so long as she didn't come to me asking for money or favors often. She quickly agreed. I arranged for the test and even shelled out extra to make sure we got the test results ASAP. But it would still take a few days. I hadn't yet met my sister's boyfriend, but when I did, I started to understand a bit more. He's half Hispanic. And my mother, though not open about it, is quite the closet racist. Something she got from my grandparents, sadly. I decided to try and talk to the guy and took him out for a beer. And while at the pub, he spilled his guts to me. He said that my mother had been whispering in his ear about how my sister is just like her. And she'd cheated before. So my sister might have as well. This made him have doubts that grew every day. And he said he wasn't sure my sister didn't cheat or get pregnant on purpose to try and baby trap him so she won't have to work any more than she already does with her little part-time online sales job. Sadly, I knew he was probably right about the latter. But other than that, he's described her as a completely different person when she's not around our mother. But ever since they've been living in mom's basement, she's become more and more like a child. After what I saw at my house, I wholeheartedly believed him. So I asked if he's suggested she get therapy. He admitted he's wanted to, but didn't have the money, and had been walking on eggshells around her and our mother for a while. So he never talked about it. Well, I guess that made some brotherly instincts I didn't know I still had kick in because I started to realize if I was gonna have a niece or nephew, I couldn't let them live with or be raised by my mother. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I told him that if the DNA results came back positive, I'd offer him a job and training at the company I now own. He very quickly agreed because he doesn't want to live with my mother any more than he is too. Well, the day of the DNA test results coming in the mail came pretty fast. But my sister called me saying they weren't in the mail she'd gotten that day. I asked who got the mail from the P.O. box, and she answered it was our mother. That pretty much confirmed my theory she was trying to force out my sister's boyfriend. But since I don't and never really have trusted my mother, with my sister's consent I preemptively got the clinic to send a copy of the DNA results to my address as well. And they did come in the mail that same day. I called my mother and asked if she'd taken the DNA test results. The following conversation is more or less what I recall since it wasn't recorded. OP, hello mom. I heard that Sis's DNA test didn't come in the mail today. MO. Yes. But it could be here soon. OP, did you take it? I know it arrived today as I paid to have it set as priority mail. What? How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never. OP, okay then. I guess I'll just bring over the backup copy that was sent to me. BBB backup copy? OP, yeah, I had one sent to me as well at the same date since I paid for it. Sis gave her okay and everything. I guess I'll just call her then and we'll meet up. Wait. That's no Ness. Click. I hung up the phone and called my sister right away. I picked up my sister and her BF from my mother's house and drove to a local diner restaurant. And there we opened the envelope together. Sure enough, the test results were positive. My sister's BF was so happy that he actually asked her if she'd want to marry him. And she said yes, like half a dozen times. The little vindictive part of me was just waiting to see my mother's face when she got the news. But what happened next honestly shocked me. When I took my sister back home, hers and her BF stuff was in the process of being put out onto the lawn by a few men we didn't recognize. My sister froze with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Our mother came huffing outside in a rage while holding the DNA test results she claimed never arrived and began verbally tearing into my sister. How could you make a baby with that racial slur? I thought your dating him was just a stupid phase. But now you're gonna have his baby and marry him. I would have been sorta okay with having his little bastard around if you weren't raising it in my home and racial slur wasn't around anymore. Said while pointing at sister's BF. But mommy, I am no buts, young lady. I demand you abort that little word I do not want to use from your belly right now or leave my house at once. Then she turned to me while snapping her fingers and said, and you. I hope you're proud of yourself. I tried to make this family normal. But you wouldn't do as I say like a good son should. And now all my plans are ruined. You're all a bunch of racial slur. Meanwhile, my sister was on her knees in the grass and holding her belly crying, I can't. I can't. My mother then actually grabbed my sister's hair and was poised ready to take a swing at her. But one good glare from me and she froze in place and then rigidly lowered her arm. So she just let out a loud growl and stormed back into her house screaming, she's your problem now, Krogel. I no longer have any children. That night I put up my sister and her BF up in a hotel till a friend of my lawyer that works in real estate helped arrange an apartment for them ASAP. And like I promised, I gave sister's BF a job. He's new and pretty much starting at the bottom rung. But he's a quick learner. It'll take a while, but I'll get him in a good position. And he's very happy to work for me. My sister is now in therapy paid for by my company's insurance, and has already started to act more mature than I've ever seen her. She's stopped referring to our mother as mommy and has even started talking about her the way I do. She came to me recently and said she's working harder now. And told me I was right about her being a spoiled mooch. And she's gonna work hard to be a good mother and provider for her child. Her therapist seems to really be doing a great job. As for my mother, well, she actually drove up to my house in broad daylight when no one was home and broke several of my front windows with large rocks she had in a metal bucket. And the rocks had racial slurs written all over them. But thanks to those cameras I put in, she was caught pretty easily. I had the footage in police hands that same day. I didn't bother to ask for repayment for the damages she caused. The windows were old anyway. And it just gave me an excuse to remodel. But I hella pressed charges and even got a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. She also took quite the downfall online, as I had a dash cam in my car that picked up everything my mother said and did. That evening she kicked my sister out. And this time I did show it to the rest of the family. And my sister also told pretty much the same story on her FB. That pretty much destroyed my mother's remaining image to her side of the family. So she's not really speaking much to any of them anymore. My mother didn't lose her job or anything because I didn't go that far. She's not set to retire for another decade or so. But some of her more petty relatives started submitting fake bad reviews for her Airbnb. And now she's probably losing customers. I've heard from one of the few relatives she's still talking to that she's pretty depressed and looks like a shell of her former self now. Your mother has serious issues that not even therapy could possibly fix, just my opinion, but good on you for standing up for yourself and your now future brother-in-law. I'm glad things are working out. Your sister is getting therapy, realizes she was a huge C*NT, and is genuinely working on getting herself better. Good on you, OP, good on you. Nah, dude. She doesn't have issues. She has a subscription. After reading OP's first post, I had written off the sister completely. Good on OP for being an amazing older brother, and of course her willingness to be a better person for her baby and soon-to-be husband. I'm really happy to have been wrong. Same. That little baby's future just got a million times brighter. I'm genuinely happy to read this update. Yeah, good on him for giving the sister a hand and another chance and being there for her and her BF after what happened initially. You are an amazing brother and your sister is lucky to have you. It's hard when you realize that you're more level-headed than a parent. Especially your mom. Man, if you're gonna make creative writing your hobby, a word of advice: do a little background research on key aspects of your story. For example, HIPAA wouldn't allow you to request a backup copy of the results simply because you paid for them, since it's not your medical records. April 10th, you write yourself as a pretentious Mary Sue, and you don't check for glaring errors. Keep up the hobby though. Everyone's written something that kicks them off into something better. Honestly, a lot of people who are here are dealing with their own trauma, and these made-up bullshit stories are incredibly inappropriate when you consider that. OP is an awful writer. Yeah, there are many Einstein clapping moments, the dialogues are very unrealistic, and there are a bunch of holes, the most blatant being what you said in the Airbnb reviews. So you managed to get sister into therapy and see serious results in under 2 months? Interesting. I mean, therapy results depends on the subject. And according to the story, it looks like OP's mother was manipulating his sister, so not seeing her at all for 2 months can play a part in that. You can't leave a review on an Airbnb unless you stayed there. One of many details of this story that are clearly bullshit. The whole thing is made up. If her BF just proposed at the diner, how did your mother know they were getting married when you all showed up at the house right after? She wasn't there for the proposal. Awfully fast to get movers to dump all her things on the lawn too. My mother tried to have me sent to military school and forge my dad's signature. Blows up in her face. After the last time I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more wary that if she did try to attack me, it'd end very badly for her. So she mostly just yelled at me. She didn't lay a finger on me again until the events of wanting my house years later. I thought nothing of it and just continued with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was right around the corner, and my dad presented me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town in. He said I was better off saving for a car than a scooter, and this would do in the meantime. I ended up agreeing with his logic and kept saving for a car. A few days later, though, I found a pamphlet for a military school while sweeping grass off the back patio after mowing the lawn. It was on the ground and under a chair near where my mom liked to sit and drink wine. I had a bad feeling she was cooking up some kind of crazy scheme, so I waited till my dad got home to show him what I'd found. He was pretty mad, but didn't jump to conclusions. So he went to see my mom with the pamphlet and asked her about it. "Dad, honey, what's this?" Mom goes white at the sight of the pamphlet. "It's nothing. I've never seen it before." "Dad, really? Because if you were planning on trying to send Krogel to military school, you know I wouldn't allow it." That's when Mom broke her facade and yelled he needs to learn some discipline. He locks his door all the time and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat. Dad, Krogel did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your stupid favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you and the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing from her brother. And as far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Krogel to military school is over. And if you try to send him, then so help me, I'll bring the hammer down on you any way I can. Mom, well, I guess this whole family is just gonna take away what little power I have left in this house then. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing. Dad, you and I both know you'd rather keel over than be nothing. Stop being so dramatic. That Krogel is growing up and is his own man now with his own money. Mom then just stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited for her to leave for work and dug out what she was trying to hide. It was an application for the military school filled out entirely in her handwriting. It required the signature of both parents or legal guardians on it. And there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized Mom's. But the other looked like a pitiful attempt at trying to replicate Dad's. He prided himself on his smooth and complex signature. And there's no way my mom could copy it without it looking like fraud. I guess she realized that after she was confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the papers and showed them to my dad later. He was mad, but figured she'd done that already and let it go. But he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few more months later, it got out that my mother was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend of hers from high school. That was the last straw for my dad, and he filed for divorce. And I went to live with him months later after he bought another house. He sped up the divorce pretty quickly by pulling out the military school papers that my mom had forged his signature on. And it wasn't just that. He also had evidence she forged his signature on at least 1 credit card application, and one other thing I don't recall. That made Mom fear being arrested for fraud, and they went through court pretty fast because she agreed to most of his terms. Mom got the house because Dad didn't want it. But she also demanded alimony and child support because my sister unsurprisingly chose to stay living with her. The judge awarded my mom the child support and a minimum amount of alimony for a decade of monthly payments. The alimony basically just covered my sister's allowance anyway. Mom was pretty mad about that and threatened to take him back to court, but he held those forged signatures over her head for years to make her back down. On the day I left to live in Dad's new house, my sister stuck out her tongue at me and smugly said Mommy told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling. And that's the reason why I was leaving the house. I just shook my head and told her to think what she wants because I didn't care anymore. Then walked out the door, finally feeling free as a bird. My relationship with my sister when she came to visit Dad's house once a week only got worse after that, until finally we stopped talking altogether for years. And I didn't really care to visit Mom's house. She pretty much gutted my old room for a home office anyway. Well, this was a roller coaster. I'm glad your father stood up for you and supported you and your choices. Take care of him and spend what time you can with him, friend. My father passed away a while ago from C-19. But I did take care of him and miss him dearly. Thank you for your kind words though. I'm honestly surprised your father didn't get a divorce much sooner. She sounds like the sort of woman that would ruin him in divorce court, unless he had the signatures as a trump card. Well, now I need to read the house story. Very sorry about your dad. I didn't know him, but he seemed like a really cool dad. Hold on to all those memories. The time I got my mother to walk right into my door. Shortly after my dad gave me a safe for my money, he also got me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox that required a code to get the key because my sister threw my safe through my bedroom window. We installed the lock and lockbox together while my mom and sister weren't home. When my sister first walked by my room after coming back, I saw her look at the lock and then go running to get mom. They both came storming up the stairs to be greeted by my dad and I. The following is paraphrased from what I remember. Mom snaps her fingers a few times and points, "What the hell is that?" Dad, a door lock. Mom, I know what it is. Why is it there? Dad, because you never see fit to punish or stop our daughter for stealing from Krogel or ransacking his room. So from now on the lock stays. Mom, he's only 14. And this is my house. He can't have a lock on the door. Dad, no, this is our house. But last I checked I paid most of the mortgage and the bills. You hardly pay anything. And I'm tired of you favoring daughter so much that Krogel keeps having to suffer for it. Mom, well then I demand you tell me the code for the lockbox at least. Dad, deadpan stare, I'm not doing that. Because you've shown I can't trust you anymore. Mom then blew her top and stormed down the stairs. My sister just stood there looking pouty and then slowly walked to her room. Things were good with the new lock. And it became habitual for me to lock it every time I left my bedroom. I saw my sister and mother staring at me on numerous occasions when I input the code to get the key. But I always made sure to use my hand or my body to block their line of sight. They really didn't like that, but there wasn't anything they could do about it. Then one day late in the month my sister came begging me for $40 to buy a video game she really wanted. Me, why do you keep coming to me to ask for money when you and I both know you'll never pay it back? Sis, I'll pay it back, I swear. Me, no, you won't. You spend everything you have and then some each month. And you know you'd want to just spend all of your allowance rather than pay me back. It's what you always do. Sis, and no I don't. Me, well then, how about we test that? I then went into my room and got a piece of paper and pen, and then hand wrote an IOU contract that stated Sis would pay me back the $40 upon getting her monthly allowance. And the IOU was to be co-signed by Dad as a witness. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. Sis read the paper, then started sniffling. She tore it in half and then ran crying to Mom yet again. It was what she did every single time she didn't get her way. Sis moomy. Sobbing. Mom, what is my little princess? What did Krogel do now? Me, she wanted to borrow money. So I asked her to sign an IOU in front of Dad. Then she freaked out. Mom, and why would you do that? She just wanted to borrow a little money. Me, would you sign the IOU as well to make sure she pays the money back? Mom, you little shit. I don't have to sign anything. Now just loan her the money. Me, not without a signed IOU. Mom stands up with her arm out like she's ready to hit me, then retracts it. You're just like your father. You have to have a paper trail for everything. I hate it. Me starts walking up the stairs to my room. At this point, Mom, I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like Dad. Because it's far better than being just like you like Sis is, because you never do anything good. Mom, what was that, you little shit? Starts storming up the stairs just as I got into my bedroom door and locked it. Now my mom had a habit of throwing open my bedroom door to yell at me back then. She did one sweeping motion of opening the door while lunging her body forward. And at this time I'd only had the lock on my door for a little while. So she wasn't used to it yet. I'd locked the deadbolt, and she tried to throw open my door and slammed right into it with a pretty loud thud. And then I heard her fall onto the floor and start making noises of crying in pain. She'd slammed her body and face against the door pretty hard. It was an old-fashioned style door made of solid wood. And it gave her a fat lip and a bump on the forehead. I opened the door and she was sprawled out and pounding her fists on the floor. "Mom, you did this to me, you little shit." "Me, you did it to yourself." "Mom, you are grounded. Get out of my sight." After that I called Dad and he just groaned over the phone about the whole situation. He said I wasn't grounded, but I was still in big trouble for goading her. And to just let him deal with her when he got home. I ended up getting a stern lecture from Dad along with added chores and a reduction to my allowance that month, but that was about it. After that day, every time Sis asked me for money, I asked her to sign an IOU. She really didn't like that. Your dad was so awesome, but not putting up with your mom and little sister's bullshit or making you put up with it either. I'm sorry you're dealing with all that, it sounds super tiring. I'm glad you have a good relationship with your dad though. You've lived a hell of life, friend. I like your stories, but I hope there's not too much of them. Because, if there's a lot of them, we can presume that your mother is probably one of the rawest human being on the earth. There's about 7, you kind of have to read them all to understand a lot of things. The sister is doing a lot better and has mentally grown up, and I'm pretty sure OP has filed a restraining order on the mom. So I hate to ask, because I know it might be coming, but what was the reaction when he went to go live with your dad after the whole divorce? I know that this was probably one of the many things, but I actually want to know if you post the next story what her reaction was when you told her I'm not living with you anymore, you have no control over me. Ever since you posted about her demanding the house, what she did to your poor sister, and now this, I'm actually surprised that the woman hasn't tried to attack innocent people if they actually yelled at her in traffic or actually walked across the street from her. Drunk mother showed up to berate me in the middle of the night and vomited all over herself. This happened not long after I turned 15 and my mom had tried to send me to military school behind my father's back. We didn't know yet, but during this time my mother was having an affair with an old high school ex-boyfriend of hers that she'd somehow reconnected with. She'd claimed she was going out to drink with friends. But she really didn't have friends, save for a few co-workers she occasionally went out with. But they didn't really like her all that much. My dad and I figured maybe she'd finally made some real friends, because she actually got a bit nicer and was leaving me alone more. Whenever mom went out drinking with coworkers, she always took a cab to head out and then came back in one later so she wouldn't drink and drive. The cab service even knew her by name since she called every week. None of her coworkers really tolerated her enough to be her designated driver. So no one really got suspicious when she was using this routine more frequently to go meet her lover. One night, however, my mom came home pissed drunk and hobbled her way up to my room. I awoke to her pounding on my locked door at like 4 a.m. She was punching and kicking it from the way it sounded. I opened the door to see her standing there looking disheveled, swaying back and forth, and slurring her words. She called me a bad child for not doing as she says anymore. And that she wished she'd only had girls. I was understandably freaked out and told her to go away. It was about that time my dad showed up and this happened. The following is again paraphrased as this happened a long time ago. Dad, what the hell is going on here in the middle of the night? Mom, I was telling this little shit exactly what I think of him for, disrespecting me. He's totally out of control. Dad, how much have you had to drink tonight? Mom, none of your fucking business, you. Looks like she's thinking really hard for a second, limp-dicked piece of fermented waste. I should have married the other guy. He's so much better than you. He treats me like a real woman. Dad, what other guy? Mom just then looked like she was gonna hurl and turned to go down the hall and headed towards the upstairs bathroom. But she only managed to hobble about halfway before projectile spewing her guts out all over the upstairs hallway. Then she fell over face first onto her own vomit and passed out. Dad was visibly disgusted. Then asked me to help him get her to the bathroom so he could clean her up. But as we went to lift her, we noticed a smell quickly forming around us. My mother had actually soiled herself while laying in her own vomit. The smell of alcoholic vomit, piss and wet shit mixed together was horrendous. But we still had to carry her to the bathroom. My dad had me get a whole roll of paper towels and a garbage bag. Then spent the next 45 minutes cleaning my mother up in the bathtub. He threw her clothes into the washing machine and then put my mom to bed. She woke up with a bad hangover the next morning, all the while not remembering anything she did or said. And was more embarrassed than I'd ever seen her when she found out. It wasn't me or my dad who told her. Nope, it was my sister. We were gonna try and spare her the finer details on what happened. But my sister blabbed the whole thing in front of her while she was nursing a coffee at the kitchen table. My dad took some time off work to call in a carpet service that same day. He had the hallway carpet ripped up, then had the floor steam cleaned before new carpet was put down. My mother hid in her room the entire time because she didn't want to be seen. And she stayed clear of me for a while. But soon fell back into her usual habits. My dad got suspicious after my mom mentioned the other guy and got the call logs from the phone company for both the house phone and mom's cell phone. And what he found was enough for him to call a private investigator. My mom was outed as a cheater soon after because she really didn't cover her tracks well. And that's when my dad finally said he wanted a divorce. I wasn't there to see the argument when he called her out. But I was told it was next level. She went crazy and threw stuff all over the kitchen. Broken dishes were everywhere. Yeah, guess who got to clean that up? Also, if anyone is wondering what happened to the guy my mom was having an affair with, my dad told me he actually applied for a transfer at his job and skipped town pretty fast. I have no idea where he went or where he is now. And from what I've heard, he didn't ever contact my mom again. So yeah, she threw away her marriage for a short fling that meant nothing. Not that I care. I'm one of the few people who are actually happy their parents divorced. It's interesting how people can ruin perfectly gifted lives for nothing worthwhile. Your father tolerated a lot of bullshit, but even he had his limit. Glad he had your back. Sad how many parents think of themselves first, then their kids. Hope you're doing fine, mate. I've been doing pretty well for a long time now. My father saw to that. I just wish he was still around because I miss him to no end. LMAO, this was a nearly shot-for-shot remake of my teenage years. LMFAO, good times. Thanks for memory lane. This brought back memories for me. I used to date an alcoholic, now sober for 18 months and a dear friend, and he would pass out after drinking and soil himself. I felt bad for him and would clean him up, thanks, medical training, but it got to be too much. I realized that I was enabling him. So I stopped and let him hit his rock bottom. That was when he decided to get serious about his sobriety. I feel so bad that your dad had to do that. Krogel, I'm truly sorry you had to go through that. But in all honesty, I love your posts. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.